Hello, welcome. My name is Dr. Paul Charnetsky. I'm the chairman of the Freeholder Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you all please stand and say the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to start first by taking a roll call, and I'll do a roll call myself and also introduce our committee members here. I'll start down on the end. I think everybody knows one of our council members, Lisa Brandon Watson, who's been a long-time resident, she's an all-free grad. She's been a tremendous asset to our committee. Next person, Gabe Romack. Gabe Romack has been in the community as long as I know. She's the deacon at the local church at St. Peter's, and she's also very active in the community, and we appreciate all she's done. Next person is Chuck Immer. Chuck Immer, longtime resident. Chuck, I believe, is retired, but he's still very active. His specialty is in communication. He's been a long career with Channel 12 News, and he's also probably best known as the son-in-law of one of the oldest Litchfield members, Isabel Clark. Of course. Our next member is Ann. Ann Claire. I call her Ann Claire. She like Ann is a long-time resident here. She's been very active in the group. She's an executive with Fox Entertainment, and she also has a real estate business, and has been very insightful for some of the city concerns. Our next member is a legend, Sonny, who's been with the city of Litchfield for years. He's been a tremendous support for me. He's helped me along this whole way. We really appreciate Sonny. Sonny's pretty much kept the rec alive over the years. Susan Fix is a mom and also runs a large real estate company, and she's been very active and tremendous help with our group. One member that's not here, he is with us virtually, is Dr. Martin Edgehart. He's a longtime community member. He has a PhD in English, and he runs the news program at East College. Remember down on the end is Dr. Andrew Frazier. He's a PhD in water specialty area and environmental science. He's the youngest member of our group. He's a father of 3 children, very, very active in the community. Other member here is Bobby Zabidik. Bobby is an all-free grad. He's been in Litchfield Park most of his life. He's a building commercial business contractor, excellent swimming Olympic athlete. He trained under Sonny at the rec. Next member is Michael Faith. He's probably one of the busiest and has run one of the largest law firms here in West Valley. He's a longtime native of Litchfield Park and been very helpful with the community as well. Another individual here, Kenny Jones, ex-councilman of Litchfield Park, recently retired assistant city manager of the city of Tempe. He's a resident of Litchfield, family, children, grandchildren, and he's been tremendously helpful with the community. The individual next to me has been a godsend for me and helped throughout this and has done most of the hard work when it's come down to some of the drafting. Suzanne Allen, a mother, takes care of her family, and a retired FBI agent, and definitely keeps us in mind. Myself, I'm Dr. Paul Charnetsky. I'm born in Litchfield Park. I've been here my whole life. I've been in primary practice for over 20 years, married, have children. Team physician for Major League Baseball, and was fortunate enough to not have known P.W. Litchfield, but my father knew him in his later years. My father was a primary physician back in 1958, and he worked with Denny's and took care of them. I was fortunate enough to take care of them, and I've been very active and involved in the city of Litchfield Park. So thank you very much. The city of Litchfield has been tremendous in their help in putting this together. This has been a huge undertaking. Before I get started with the presentation, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. We've taken roll call. Our minutes are recorded, and they're actually can be seen on YouTube. So my first order of action would be to ask for is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So
Okay, Lisa. Second? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So the next order of business, I'm going to present to you our charter. I'm going to just kind of move over and move to the other way. So back in November, we, the city of Litchfield Park, voted to put together a freeholder committee. This group all came together, we gathered our signatures. There were 18 people that ran in the November election, and 14 of us were elected. Over the past several months, before the election, we were getting educated about the charter, learning what it needed to do to put the charter together, but we're not able to actually get together as a group until after the election. Since November 6th, this group, we've been meeting twice a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, meetings lasting anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours, going through as we put together this charter. There's been back and forth conversation throughout. Everybody's had input. There's been dialogue on some of the more controversial issues that I'm going to discuss with you in a minute. But overall, the group has come together very well. And I think we've put together quite a very, very good charter for the city. So before we get going on this, I just want to step back like this. People want to know why we need to have a charter right now. Why all of a sudden now? It's been 40 years since anybody's got a charter. Later in 2023, there's been there was a bill introduced out of Tucson that wanted to stop any further cities from having a charter. It was basically saying, since nobody's put together a charter in 40 years, why do we need a charter? That kind of got our pressure going to get this thing motivated and try to get it done. So since November, we've been working on this charter, we've been putting it together, and we're ready to present it here to you today. With that, I'm going to go ahead and start our first slide. So the Arizona Constitution grants authority for cities with a population above 3,500 to adopt the city charter. The entire charter city process takes 2 years to put together. So there was a lot of background work that was being put together. Plus, we had to get our signatures turned in a certain time before the election, so that's where that 2-year process comes together. The 14 freeholders that we've seen today that are elected here have been, like I said, working together to put this charter together. Once the charter gets completed, and the timeline is such that we need to get it put on the ballot in March. In order for us to get it put on the ballot in March, we have to come together on the charter, we have to agree to the charter, and then we have to submit it so that it can get published, and then it can actually get recorded in the county so that it can actually go on that election. That's where we are right now. We're at the point now where we feel like the charter is ready to go. We want to present it to you. If there's some things that you think we need to add or do, we would like to get them in as soon as possible. That vote will come in March, and our goal is to get basically 100% of people agree on this charter. It's important that we go through this. Right now, there are 19 charter cities in Arizona, including Abigail, Goodyear, Peoria, Phoenix, basically all of our large municipalities. The last time a charter was formed was in 1982. So what does it mean to the city? Currently, we're a general law city and governed under state law. By becoming a charter city, we would have more control over how the city operates, since it's having the authority to do certain things. One, decide how the mayor and council are elected and appointed. Two, determine which city staff members are appointed. Establish a process for adopting and revising city ordinances, and determine how city staff are hired and terminated. Currently, the city's governance can only be changed through state legislative action. In a charter city, future changes can be made, amending the charter. Once the charter is put together, it cannot be amended unless it goes back to a vote to the citizens. What does it mean to the residents? So protections for the city are provided by the citizen guidelines versus state laws, including additional restrictions on how public funds are invested, how to hire and terminate the city manager. So no offense to that. Additional checks and balances on contracts, how ordinances are adopted. The residents will have the ability for its own self-governance, and the charter can be changed in the future through a citywide election. So this is just a little bit of comparison currently where we are now from a general law city to a proposed city charter rule. Right now, the minimum age for mayor and council member is 18. The group came together, and this was actually one of those controversial ones that we went back and forth on, and felt though that the age of 21 would be more appropriate. Second one, right now our city does not have term limits. Again, nothing against our mayor. We have probably the greatest mayor in the city. He's been with us 18 years. This was never designed to move him on. He's been a tremendous asset. But what we've decided as a group is to come together and have 4-year term limits. Sounds like a lot. It's important for a small city like us that we do have the opportunity for people to stay. In comparison, if you look at Abigail, they're on 2-year terms. Other cities have 4-year terms, 2 4-year terms, 4 2-year terms. So this is, I think, going to be a little bit more appropriate for our small city. Right now, there is no debt policy. Well, we've put in that we've built in a debt policy that's going to be required by way of ordinance. That's going to be more checks and balances, so that we somehow can't bankrupt our city. The city minimum reserve policy is not required by law right now. What we have is built in a city minimum reserve, including a target of 25% minimum unassigned fund balance. We just reinforce property tax must be approved by voters. We reinforce that property tax must be approved by voters. And that's not going to. On the proposed term limits, this was one of the more sort of heated, controversial topics. Again, we have one of the greatest mayors in the city of Arizona, arguably through the country. Our current mayor, serving on the effective date of the charter, may continue in office through the end of his term, and then will be allowed to run for one more term. That would allow him at least another 6 years, should he choose to do that. And all other council members will be in that same position as well. Council members serving on the effective date of the charter may continue in the office as well. The other thing that it's built in, a current council member that termed out would still be available, or still would be eligible to run for the mayor position and have 4 year terms as a mayor. And I guess if the mayor wanted to go back to a council member, he'd have 4 year terms as a council member. That's not bad. So why form a charter now? In February of 2023, legislation was introduced to eliminate charter cities. The bill was amended to include only cities with populations of 500,000 or greater, but the bill ultimately failed. This is what kind of triggered us, and the time is now. We're going to put this together to get it done. We'll likely continue to see challenges and attempt to limit charge cities by the state legislature. Again, this has been a tremendous undertaking to go. We want to get this through now. We want to get it on the ballot and get it passed. It still has to go to the governor. The governor still has to sign it. So some of the highlights of the charter that we went into, and I'm going to start with the bottom one because it's probably the most important one, is that to preserve the legacy of Paul W. Litchfield, try to preserve not only the Wawoma and the legacy of the city of Litchfield, but the homestead. Right now, the city of Litchfield Park does own that property. There are restrictions based on the historical grant and what was said and how that transaction was made, but there was nothing in particular about the city cannot sell the property. That would be built into the city would not be able to sell that property, and then we'll still have to develop that per the guidelines of the original transaction. The second highlight of the charter is the physical responsibility, debt limitations. Council, by way of ordinance, will adopt a debt limitation policy. The city talked about the city minimum reserve policy. And then finally, the ethics policy that we built in terms of personal integrity and some of the recipient gifts, and try to avoid any secondary gain in terms of people running to the city. So the city draft is not complete yet. We have a few other things that we would like to discuss. We also wanted to leave this open to the city to give you opportunity to input on this. And then we'll have an all-mail-in ballot in March, and we'll pass. And then we'll need to present it to the governor, and we'll go from there. Thank you. So the next part of the meeting, we're going to go ahead and open up to public comments. If you would like to speak, you will need to request one of these forms, fill it out, and give it to the city clerk, and then they'll pass it on to me. So the first, the rules on this, we're kind of limited to 3 minutes. It does need to pertain to things that are on the agenda, which would include the charter itself. The first call to order is Ryan Bentley. And then if you could just, go ahead and step over to the podium. And then if you could just state your name and address. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Brian Dudley. I live at 145 East of Sherrill Lane. Been resident of Litchfield Park for 11 years now. First of all, I'd really like to thank the Board of Freeholders for putting together this charter. I think it's awesome, and very pretty. I have a couple of opinions, but they're in good faith, and I want to say I'm very impressed and very proud to be a resident of this city. So the things I would like to bring up, just kind of in order as I'm reading the charter here. So under Article 2, in Section 3, subsection 2, we go into some of the things that corporations and other firms that might be into the city are going to be required by the city to take care of. And one of those things that's mentioned here in this page is water pressure, storage, and transmission. Big fan of this, kind of building on this legacy of Paul Litchfield and the forward-thinking architects that built this city for the last 100 years. I think we should be more ambitious. I think we can look forward another 100 years and adopt provisions that are part of the state charter and say that it should be at least 100 years worth of water that they need to be accounting for. And I think even beyond that, we should include electrical production. So some kind of solar or some kind of energy capture that's available freely to kind of continue that legacy of Victor Gruen and Frank Leary, who are also architects of this of the city and the original city plan, to keep that moving forward on into the future. And to say that we're here to stay. That was my first opinion there. The next thing is as we move to Article 3 and the qualifications, I'm a fan of increasing the age limit from 18 to 21, specifically for the mayor. In fact, to be open for it to go even older than that, to say 26 or 30 or something like that. The city council, I am comfortable with 18. I think it's nice to have a good cross-section of the different residents within the community. So that was my opinion on that particular one. I know it's in here, and I know it's one of the points that you had on the slide of contention, but I am also in favor of the term limits. And again, that I agree that we have the best mayor within the United States. I'll be so bold. On Article 3, Section 12, it talks to how we're going to fill vacancies and that it's going to be by appointment. I would like to see maybe a little more specificity to say if a vacancy is going to be greater than, say, 365 days, then a special election would be warranted in that case, otherwise by appointment. Or by appointment until the special election is held. And the last opinion that I had, thanks for bearing with me, for Article 7, Section 2, the taxing powers. I do appreciate that the property tax is going to be put to a vote. In my opinion, it should be all taxes that are being proposed should all be put to a vote. So it should not be limited only to property taxes. Again, thank you very much, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much. I will say, though, the water, the age, the term limit, all those four things were heated discussions, and we really appreciate your support on that. Okay, the next person is Bob Ellers. Just state your name and address.
I'm Bob Ehlers, at 49 North Philadelphia. And I'll keep it real quick. About term limits, I did do a little bit of research on that with the National League of Cities. They did a study of cities, I believe it was 100,000 population and down, and so smaller cities, I guess 100,000 is small. 45% of them had 4-year terms, and 54% of them had 2-term limits. So I really think as the city starts to revitalize and grow, it's going to be important to have different constituencies represented in the council, and I think having turnover at a reasonable pace of 8 years in seems pretty good. So that's just my thoughts on that. I would like to see some floor for voter approval of land acquisitions and divestitures. So basically, saying any land of a certain size or a certain amount. I think we have to go and model that, where the city is going to acquire or divest itself of land, that should go up for a vote. Because I think there's a materiality that has to be brought to bear in that. I'd like to see a historic preservation clause, and I think I've volunteered over at the museum a little bit. I think it's a noble effort to do that. There are other properties that I think need to be put into historical preservation, and I'd like to see if it can be done within the time frame, something of a mechanism for that. You know, not necessarily calling out specific properties or enumerating it, but at least trying to get historic preservation in there. I did see there's a little bit about prevailing wage and collective bargaining agreements. I think in contracting, it's going to be really important that we as a city anticipate where the larger cities may be going and how that may influence the contracts that we sign. And I didn't see anything that addressed that area of labor negotiations, collective bargaining agreements, prevailing wage laws, etc. As the city grows, I think that's important to address. The last thing is I asked the city to do an impact assessments of risk of doing this, particularly around legal challenges that may be brought up as all of a sudden we start now diverting off of state law and having our own laws. Is the city attorney going to have to be ramped up? Are we going to have more people going into court? And are there going to be costs related to that? Basically defending the charter and defending the rules. Because even though we have city code today, that city code is aligned with the state. And so, you know, as we get a charter, there's probably a place for jurisdictional problems that might be created. So I thought that was very good. Thanks.
Thank you. And then also we have another, Sarah Pearson.
Hi, I'm at 229 South Cervado Circle, and been in the park since about 2009. So first, just thank you for the immense amount of time you put into this draft in such a short amount of time. Taking advantage of this opportunity, given the legislation that was introduced, but also just as our city grows and transforms, I think this is important work. So I'll be brief, just to be back to some things that have been spoken to. Increasing the age to 21, I think is good and supportive. I would support that at 24, 26, making sure that frontal lobe is well developed. So just throwing that out there. I think the term limits, I think that's reasonable. We've been immensely fortunate. I think along those same lines, the what I'll call integrity statement, just having that transparency, because we've been so fortunate and blessed to have leaders that have operated with such integrity, but not making assumptions, that moving forward is making that explicit, I think is important to continue just the leadership that we've had and been fortunate to have, but I like that that was explicitly stated in there, so I appreciate that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll need to fill out a sheet just so we get your information, name and information. As I mentioned before, our timeline is pretty short. So I think if anybody does want to speak, tonight is tonight. And just want to fill out a forum, we'd love to hear from you. Get some great comments. Come on up right now and just state your name and where your address is, and then you can fill out a form there. That you bring over.
Good evening. My name is John Pizzano with West Alpena Drive, Richfield Park. And I'll want to thank everyone for this opportunity. And from past experiences, it's painfully obvious how much work goes into this. So thank you to Vicky. I think it's proven that the closer decisions are made to the problem, the better the decision. So self-governance is good. Along with that comes some cost, right? You take on more responsibility. Has there been any projections on legal, all of a sudden you take on more responsibility? There's going to be, it was said before, some legal challenges. So just a question for the group. Doesn't have to be answered now, just throw that out there. Also, cost, right? There's a significant amount of cost. If we're challenging state road usages and things like that, the state usually pushes back and says, well, we're not going to give you any grant money for road improvements and stuff. So, have there been any kind of projections on the impact of self-governance that way? And then, having said all that, how does that affect the taxpayer? Is there going to be more local tax needed for self-governance? Those things all have costs. And I know a lot of information, a lot of discussion went into that. I just have those kind of questions and certainly don't need an answer today. I just want the group to muddle that over because those things do tend to come to the surface. They don't come automatically. So in any event, on the election cycle, mayor and councilman, is there a way of staggering that so they're not all due at once? So the mayor do half of the board members are due 2 years later. So you stagger so it all just doesn't come apart at once. I think that's a good carryover of good communication. I'm not sure how it's done now, but I just wanted to throw those out to you. Again, I want to thank the group. Good stuff. It's nice living here. Nice meeting all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you for those comments. And can we just make sure you Heather Clark.
I've lived here off and on since '64 and permanently for the last 40 years. And, it's been absolutely a wonderful place to live. And we used to be able to go to a restaurant and know everybody. And now there's all the new people coming. So it's a big deal. I appreciate the growth, and I also appreciate that we can't grow much bigger than we are. I think that's cool. My question is, when you were talking about they introduced some legislation about stopping charters, if we're in the process of doing that and that comes along, is that possible to stop this whole process? You say no? Okay. And then also you get it to the governor, and then the governor would say, no, I'm not doing that, so. Okay. Okay, that's all. No. If we do, when we do this, and we change the ordinances and things where we don't have to follow some kind of regulation rules about how long it takes to get somebody to do something in ordinances. Like it took 8 months to get my neighbor to have his crappy yard cleaned up. 8 months because of the process. And can we change that with this? Or is that just an ordinance we can change? Okay, so, that's it.
Thank you again. Anybody else have any other questions or would like to comment on? Great, thank you.
Paul, can you get copies of the charter? On the city's website. Can you navigate through that? It's not, it doesn't pop up on the front page.
It's right on the front page, it's very bottom.
Is it down? Is it under?
The city charter, you put that link and there's other links on that page.
So, I wanted to thank everybody for coming. At this point, we're going to enter into an executive session to discuss a couple final matters. We're also going to take into consideration some of the things that you've already talked about, that you've discussed down. We've taken those down, and we're going to talk about them a little bit here. So at this point, again, I would like to thank everybody again. The draft charter will again soon to be finalized, will be available through the city.
Once the Board of Freeholders makes the final vote, hopefully tomorrow, with regard to the charter that goes for the election, then that document will be placed on the city's website as well.
I'm going to then make a motion to move to executive session. Is there a second motion? Any discussion? All those in favor of moving to executive session? Opposed? Thank you. Short.